They say the most painful betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the person who sleeps beside you, the person who kisses you good morning, who knows every crack in your armor, every tender place in your heart, and chooses to press on those cracks anyway. My name is Layla, and for 6 years I loved a woman who was quietly, deliberately ashamed of me. Her name was Diana. Beautiful, sharp, ambitious Diana, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made every head turn. She was everything the world called impressive, and me, I was the man she kept in the background, the man she introduced with half a name and a vague smile. "This is my partner," she would say, her voice trailing off like she was already bored of the sentence. I noticed, of course I noticed, but I told myself it was just her personality. She was private, reserved, professional. I told myself that love didn't need an audience. I told myself a lot of things in those 6 years. None of them were true. The night everything changed was the night of the Blackwood Foundation Gala, the most prestigious charity event in the city. Diana had been invited by her firm. It was a night for powerful people, CEOs, senators, philanthropists, the kind of event where careers were made and fortunes were whispered about over crystal glasses of champagne. She told me I could come, but the way she said it, the pause before the invitation, the careful flatness in her eyes, told me something else entirely. "Just don't try to talk business with anyone," she said, as she adjusted her earrings in the mirror. "You'll be out of your depth. Just stay close to me and look pleasant." I smiled and said nothing. What she didn't know, what she had never bothered to find out in 6 years, was who I actually was, what I had actually built, because Diana had fallen in love with the version of me I showed her, quiet, gentle, unassuming. She never asked about my work beyond the surface. She never wondered why my name appeared in certain documents, in certain boardrooms. She had decided who I was in the first month, and she never looked again. That night, I wore a simple black suit. Nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have planned, was that someone else in that room already knew exactly who I was, and he was about to make sure everyone else did, too. The gala was everything you'd imagined. Gilded ceilings, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, women in gowns that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Diana moved through the room like she belonged to it completely. I followed a step behind. Always a step behind. The first moment of humiliation came early. We approached a group of her colleagues, senior partners, their spouses, faces full of polished smiles. Diana greeted them warmly, laughed at their jokes, touched arms, leaned in, and when one of them looked at me, curious, she said it again. "This is my friend." Lila's colleague actually brought him along. My friend. Not her partner, not her love, not even the man I've been with for 6 years. Her friend. I felt the words like a cold cloth pressed to my face, but I kept smiling. I kept standing there. I had become very good at standing there. As the evening went on, I watched her work the room with surgical precision, charming men she wanted contracts from, dismissing the ones she found beneath her. And every time she introduced me, I became something lesser, a +1, an accessory, a prop in her performance. At one point, a woman touched my arm and whispered, "Are you okay? You look like you're somewhere far away." "I'm fine," I said, "just watching." And I was. I was watching Diana laugh too loudly at a man's joke about funding. I was watching her place her hand on his arm, the same way she never placed it on mine in public. I was watching the woman I loved reduce herself and me to transactions. Then came the moment I will never forget. Diana found herself near a man named Richard Calloway. Richard Calloway, the name alone, made people in this city straighten their spines. He was the kind of billionaire who didn't need to announce himself. His presence was the announcement. I had met Richard once before. Briefly, in a boardroom 8 months ago, we had shaken hands over a deal that I had led, a merger that had quietly reshaped a corner of the industry. He had said I was one of the sharpest minds he had encountered in years. Diana didn't know any of this. She approached him, confident and glowing, and launched into her introduction, her firm, her achievements, her vision. And then, with that same practiced casualness, she gestured toward me. And this is just... But Richard Calloway was already walking past her. He was walking toward me. He extended his hand, and his voice, warm, certain, loud enough for the people around us to hear, cut through the music and the murmur of the room. "Is this who I think it is? The man behind the Meridian deal? I've been hoping to run into you for months." The room shifted. Diana's smile froze on her face like a photograph left too long in the sun. And I shook Richard Calloway's hand, looked him in the eyes, and said, "It's good to see you again, Richard." The silence around us was deafening. Diana turned to look at me, really look at me, for what felt like the very first time. What happened next wasn't a scene. It wasn't shouting or exposing or public destruction. It was something quieter. And somehow that made it more devastating. Richard spent the next 20 minutes asking me for my thoughts on an upcoming project. He introduced me to 3 of his associates as someone you absolutely need to know. He spoke about my work with the kind of respect that money cannot buy and flattery cannot manufacture. It has to be earned. And Diana stood beside me the entire time, silent, still, her champagne glass growing warm in her hand, and watched. I didn't gloat. I didn't look at her with triumph in my eyes. I simply existed, fully, unapologetically, without apology or smallness, the way I should have been allowed to exist all along. By the end of the evening, 4 people had asked for my card. 2 of them were Diana's senior partners, men she had spent years trying to impress. On the drive home, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" And I looked out the window at the city passing by, and I said, "You never asked." Those 3 words held everything. 6 years of standing a step behind, 6 years of being introduced as a vague shadow, 6 years of being made to feel like something she was tolerating rather than choosing. She cried that night, and I believed her tears were real, but real tears don't erase real choices. Pain in the aftermath doesn't undo the harm of the in-between. I left quietly. No explosion, no revenge plotted in the dark. I simply packed what was mine and walked out of a life that had been slowly, gently suffocating me. The morning after the gala, my phone lit up with messages, business ones from people who had seen me, truly seen me in that gilded room, new doors opening just as old ones closed, and the greatest peace I have ever felt settled over me like sunlight after a long winter. Here is what I know now. The people who hide your worth are never protecting you. They are protecting themselves from the discomfort of your light. They keep you small because your fullness threatens something in them that they cannot name and will not examine. You do not need to announce yourself. You do not need to fight to be seen. Stand in rooms. Be fully who you are. The right people will find you, even in the most crowded, gilded, glittering rooms. And the ones who were ashamed of you, they will have to live with what they refuse to see. That is its own kind of justice, and it is enough.